Hey there guys, I'm SonicGhost, and today we are here to review the latest entry in the Nintendo Switch family, the Nintendo Switch OLED. Now this is a model Switch I've been playing around with now for a handful of weeks, and I'm ready to go ahead and give my thoughts on this system. Now I did make a unboxing video of the Nintendo Switch OLED covering everything that was included with this said model of Switch. So if you want to go ahead and check out that video, there will be a link down in the description below, so I highly recommend you watch that if you want to see what comes included with the new model Nintendo Switch. But today we're mainly going to be focusing on all the new things that the OLED model Switch brings to the table compared to the OG model Switch. Now this here is actually my launch system that I've been using since the system came out in 2017. And I actually made a review video based on this Switch when I first got my system. So if you want to hear my initial thoughts about the Nintendo Switch during its release year, I highly recommend you do so. There'll be a link to that said review video down in the description below as well. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the big talking points with what makes the OLED model Switch different compared to the other models, which will include the base model Switch and also even the Switch Lite. So the big difference you're going to notice right away with the OLED Switch is that this model has a much bigger screen on it compared to any other Switch model. Now compared to the OG model Switch that I have here, the original model Switch has a 6.2-inch LCD display, while the OLED Switch model has a 7-inch OLED display. So not only is the panel type different, but so is the size, and that extra inch, I will tell you, makes a pretty big difference. A lot of games now make it easier with this new size system to read text more clearly in portable mode. So a lot of games, say like RPGs for example, with a lot of dialogue on screen, will be easier now to read on this new model Switch. But the size of the screen does not change its resolution. The Switch's screen, no matter which version of the system you're playing, this also will include the OLED model, is a 720p display. So even though we have a bigger size screen, you may think this would make things a little more blurry, but in my opinion, this screen looks very clean and also very sharp, even if it is still only 720p. But now we have a different screen type here that we're working with, OLED. Now compared to the original model's display being an LCD panel, the OLED panel on the new model Switch has better color accuracy with higher contrast and true blacks to the image. OLED panels are able to display true blacks in an image by turning off the backlight whenever there is a black image on screen. So because of this, images will look a lot more faithful to their original coloring based on developers' visions. So I have noticed while playing on the system, things definitely look a lot more vivid and definitely pop out in comparison to the old model's display. And you can definitely tell a lot of this is based on that OLED panel type they chose for this new model Switch. But that is not the only thing that makes this different. We also have a new vivid color option in the Switch's menus now. So this is an option that only affects things in handheld mode. This does not change anything for the console's output to a television. But now with vivid colors on, colors will pop a lot more on the OLED model Switch. And you can toggle this between a vivid color mode and a standard mode, as some games may have too much color with this vivid mode turned on. And if that is the case, you can go back and use standard colors that the Switch can output in case things show up a little too oversaturated depending on the game. But from my experience, I've left the system on vivid color mode and things have popped. The system looks very, very crisp, colors are very accurate, and thanks to how nice and vivid this display is, I was even able to play games outside with no problems dealing with brightness issues, and I was able to see games perfectly fine in direct sunlight. This panel is nice and bright, so no matter what kind of conditions you're playing in, it's very easy to see any of the games that you are playing. Now the bigger 7-inch touchscreen isn't just a big improvement when it comes to being able to read text on screen, but also that extra inch makes a pretty big difference for touchscreen gaming for the few games on the Switch that are fully controlled using the touchscreen on the panel. So in handheld mode, you can go ahead and either use your finger or even a stylus to go ahead and tap around on the screen or draw objects, and this is really helpful for games like, say, Mario Maker 2, where having that extra inch on your Switch's display will allow you to be able to make more fine-tuned adjustments to your stages in the said game. If you want to go ahead and use the stylus on your Nintendo Switch, there's an option in the settings to swap between using your standard touch controls using a finger and then stylus controls to give you more accuracy when using a pen on your system. Now, the display is not the only thing that they changed here on this OLED model Switch. They also changed where the speakers are located on the system. Now they're a little bit further down on the system itself, but that actually isn't that much of a problem because they changed the speakers on the system and they improved them compared to other models of the Switch. Now, Nintendo is advertising the OLED Switch to have an enhanced sound output, and from my experience, I can definitely notice that the sound coming out of the built-in speakers on the OLED model Switch is better than the original design on the OG Switch. Sounds from these new speakers on the OLED model definitely sound a lot more loud and clearer compared to other model Switches on the market. But don't just take my word for it. Let's go ahead and listen to a sound comparison between the OLED model Switch and the OG Switch's built-in speakers.
We'll soon be entering CGR's atmosphere.
The bounty for this mission does not seem appropriate. The risk clearly outweighs the reward. Treat our lost assets with care, lady.
Entering the atmosphere in T-10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Now, if you're not the biggest fan of using the built-in speakers on your Switch for listening to games and you want to go ahead and use headphones, there is a headphone jack on the OLED model Switch where you can go ahead and connect wired headphones to the system, but you can also use Bluetooth headphones on your Switch thanks to update 13.0 adding Bluetooth support to all models of the Nintendo Switch. With this update, you can go ahead and pair any pair of Bluetooth headphones or Bluetooth speaker to your Nintendo Switch, and by doing so, you'll be able to output sound wirelessly without having the need of any extra adapters for your system. But there is a catch to this, however. You can only use up to 2 wireless controllers while using Bluetooth audio, which means you can either use 2 Pro controllers or 2 individual Joy-Cons, meaning that if you pair 2 individual Joy-Cons to your system to make 1 full controller, you cannot connect any other wireless devices to your system, whether it be any extra Joy-Cons or an extra Pro controller. You now will hit a limit that the system is sharing between data for Bluetooth audio and Bluetooth controllers like your Joy-Cons. You also cannot use Bluetooth audio during local communications, so if you're planning on using Bluetooth audio during a LAN party, for example, when you're all connecting your Switches wirelessly to each other to, say, play a game of Mario Kart, this is not possible. But you also cannot use Bluetooth microphones on the system using this Bluetooth method, but let's be honest, that's not really something that a lot of people would have been using here on the Switch, as most Nintendo Switch games that use online functionality don't even support voice chat via the system. So even though this may sound like a problem, most games don't even require a microphone anyways. And lastly, audio latency using Bluetooth headphones could be worse than, say, just using the built-in speakers on your Switch or just connecting a pair of headphones to the system's headphone jack instead, but this is a trade-off you get for using Bluetooth headphones, and this is not just a Switch issue. Any device using Bluetooth audio could have higher latency depending on the headphones. In my experience, sounds via Bluetooth headphones have been almost instantaneous from when I'm doing an action in the game, to where I hear a sound in my ears. So in my experience, Bluetooth audio is the way to go if you want that ultra portability factor for your Switch and not have to worry about lugging around extra cables with you for wired headphones and just want to throw wireless devices into your pocket and just be on your merry way. Now let's go ahead and talk about the battery life between all the different versions of the Switches. As over the years, Nintendo has released either brand new Switch models like the Switch Lite, or even revisions to their hardware like the Red Box Switch, which is the same model as the original model here, but with an improved battery. And once again, the OLED model Switch brings some new information to the table about battery life. So as a breakdown, the Nintendo Switch's battery life, going from worst to best, is that the original model that was released in 2017 has approximately about 2.5 to 6.5 hours of battery life depending on what you're doing. The Switch Lite's battery is approximately 3 to 7 hours, again depending on what you're doing. The Red Box Switch was released 2019 onwards, which if you're unsure which model is a Red Box Switch, if you have a Switch with the model number HAC-001-01, this is the Red Box Switch, which has about approximately 4.5 to 9 hours of battery life, and the OLED Switch shares this same battery life. The OLED Switch model has approximately 4.5 to 9 hours of total battery. These are the specs Nintendo lists for all of their Switch models on their website, and they give such a wide variety of times simply just because battery life will definitely depend on the games you play and how you are playing them, whether it be using a lot of wireless controllers on your system, max brightness or next to no brightness on the settings, and so on and so forth. Now in my experience, the battery life on the original model Switch here, my launch model, not really the best. On average for me, I usually got about 2 to 3 hours of total playtime on this device in portable mode, and that's pretty doable, but I've noticed while playing games on my OLED model Switch, things have been drastically different. A good example of this is I played through the entirety of Metroid Dread on this system in portable mode from start to finish, and I was able to play through the entire game in a little over 3 hours, and I only drained about 60% of my total battery. So I went from 100% down to about 40% by the time I was done playing Metroid Dread. And at that point, I still could have played more games on my OLED Switch here and still would have got more time out of the battery. So the battery life on this new model Switch is really good, and some of that I believe also has to do with the panel type that they chose to use on this model system. Since this new model Switch is using an OLED panel and it can turn off screen pixels when it's trying to display a true black color, this is going to probably end up save you battery life over time compared to using other Switch models which are all LCD panels. OLED technology, being able to turn off pixels to display true blacks, is going to help save you on battery in the long run. So in my opinion, this panel type may make portable gaming not just look better, but also something that could make battery life be better in the long run as well. Now I want to go ahead and talk about one of my favorite changes made to the new model Switch, and that's its kickstand. Now if we take a look at the original Switch's kickstand, we will see that it works, but it wasn't the best kickstand in the world. This was just a tiny little piece of plastic that was off to the side on the back of the system, and it only really had one angle to work with, so it didn't even have the best viewing angle when using the Switch in its so-called tabletop mode. And since this was just a tiny little piece of plastic on the back of your system, it wasn't able to fully support the Switch's weight, and sometimes the kickstand could just snap right off of your system. But the kickstand here on the new model Switch here, the OLED model, this is a vast improvement compared to the kickstand that was featured with the original model system. The Switch OLED's kickstand is a much more sturdy kickstand compared to the original model system being made of a solid metal. But it's not just its build quality that's different this time around, it's also sporting a lot more flexibility in comparison to the original model's plastic kickstand that only went in one angle. This new model will allow you to adjust your angle of your Switch to multiple positions, which makes things much easier for tabletop play. I've been actually playing a good amount of this Switch in tabletop mode, since the OLED's kickstand is a vast improvement, letting me able to just play in any kind of position that I want. This makes things much easier for party settings, or even if you're just going to put the system down on your desk, for example, to play a little bit of games in between doing some work on a computer. This is a vast improvement compared to the original model system, and from my experience, I didn't really use the system in tabletop mode all that much, just because of how the original kickstand on the OG Switch, it just didn't really work all that well from my past experiences. But the kickstand here on the new model system is so much better, and I find myself playing my new model Switch here in tabletop mode very frequently. Now, you may notice that when you use the kickstand on your OLED model Switch, you'll notice a little slot behind it, and that is the SD card slot. They did move this slot ever so slightly on this model Switch compared to the original, but it's still the same practice. The SD card slot for the system is located on the back, right underneath where the kickstand is, making it so that this SD card won't be popping out anytime soon when you're playing your games on the go. You can go ahead and add a micro SD card to your system to expand its storage, but by default, the new model Switch here, the OLED model, comes with 64 gigs of onboard storage, which was double of the original Switch's storage, being a total of 32 gigs. So that extra 32 gigs of onboard storage will make it so you have more space for downloaded games on your system, but I would still recommend getting a micro SD card for your Switch if you do plan on playing a lot of downloadable games on your system, as 64 gigs will fill up very fast, especially with AAA releases being downloaded off of the eShop. Now, up to this point, we've been talking strictly about how the Switch OLED here differs from the OG model system in portable mode, but how do these systems perform on the TV? Well, we have a new dock to go ahead and take a look at, and quite frankly, the experience between systems is the same, but the dock is slightly different. The dock that comes with the OLED Switch is a redesigned dock compared to the original. This new model dock sports a new curved design and also has two USB 2.0 ports on the side, and if you flip it around to the back, you have a new panel that pops out, revealing your last three ports on the back of the dock, which is your power in with the AC adapter, an HDMI out, and new to this dock is a LAN port, allowing you to use a wired Ethernet connection with your Nintendo Switch right out of the box. Now, the original dock for the Switch allowed you to also use a wired internet connection, but you needed to use a USB LAN adapter to do so, as you didn't have a LAN port built into the dock. So with this new dock, this makes it much easier for you to play games online with your friends with a wired internet connection. To use your new dock here with your OLED model Switch is the same practice as using any dock with other Switch models that are released. So basically all you need to do is you take your system and plop it into your Switch dock, which will swap the system from being played in portable mode to playing the game now on a television. Doing so, you can play your games up to 1080p using the HDMI output on the back of the dock. And when you're done playing your games on the dock and want to go ahead and play your games now in portable mode on the Switch, all you have to do is just connect any Joy-Cons that you've taken off of your system, connect them to the sides of your Switch, and take your system out of the dock, and you'll be playing in portable mode. But the nice thing about this new dock is that you don't just have to use it with the new model Switch, the OLED model. You can also use this new dock with old model Switches as well. So any Switch that can be used on a dock, which is basically either the original model Switch or the OLED Switch, you can go ahead and use this new dock with those systems. And same thing goes for using the old dock with the OLED model Switch. You can go ahead and use the old dock with this OLED model with no problems whatsoever. So if you wanted to go ahead and still use your old Switch dock with your new model Switch, there is nothing stopping you from doing so. But speaking of using multiple Switches with multiple Switch docks, that does bring up a point that I want to talk about in this video, and that's if you're a user of multiple Switch systems at the same time. How is that experience, you may ask? Well, the experience is kind of a mixed bag if you ask me. Now, when you're first setting up your Nintendo Switch, you can go ahead and transfer a user profile between Switch systems. This will allow you to transfer over your Nintendo ID along with all your save data from one Switch to another. And by doing so, you can go ahead now and use all the information on your new system and be ready to go out of the box. But you still need to go ahead and download all of your previously played games, as games don't get transferred between systems doing this profile transfer. You can share update data between the Switch systems using local communication. This will allow you to transfer update data that is installed on one system to another without the use of an internet connection, which will speed the process up of getting all of your games installed on your new model Switch. But you can also go ahead and back up and download your save data if you have a Nintendo Switch Online membership, as with that membership you have access to cloud saves, and with this you can actually download any save that you have on your Nintendo Switch profile that is backed up to the cloud and put it on your system, whether it be an old Switch or a new Switch. But one thing to note about this whole process is that you have to mark one of your systems as a primary console. What this means is that the system that is marked as a primary console can play games offline. Any Switch that you're using that is not set as the primary console will need to connect to the internet to play any downloaded games on your system. So, for example, if you have a copy of, say, Sonic Mania that you installed from the eShop on both models of your Switch, you would need to have your system set as the primary system to play Sonic Mania without an internet connection. Because if you tried to play this game on your system that wasn't marked as a primary and you're not connected to the internet, you're going to get an error. So unfortunately, trying to use games between systems could be a little bit of a headache. And one of the biggest issues I've noticed is that if your primary system is playing a game while connected to the internet, your secondary system will not be able to play any of its downloaded games. And it does not matter if that's a downloaded copy of a game or even DLC tied to your physical cartridge, you will still get errors saying that you are not allowed to play that game as the primary system is currently using that data. So on one hand, using multiple systems at the same time is kind of an easy process, with local communication allowing you to share data between the systems for updates at the same time, and then also using cloud saves, keeping saves between multiple systems you're playing on makes things easier on the player as well. But on the other hand, because of this primary system thing, that makes gaming on multiple systems at the same time kind of an impossible task. Now, for most people, playing on multiple systems at the same time isn't really much of a possibility, as if you're the only one really playing the Nintendo Switch, you're probably only going to be playing one system at a time. But say if you're in a family situation where you want to take your old system and give it to a family member, and then you're going to want to keep your system as the primary system to take with you on the go, that's when you can start noticing these issues, as if you're trying to play a game and a family member who now owns your old system is trying to play a game at the same time, you may run into these issues. But since now we talked about the Nintendo Switch Online, let's go ahead and talk about this subscription service. When I originally reviewed the Nintendo Switch back in 2017, you were able to play games online for free, but we were promised that that was going to change in the future with a subscription plan, and that plan is now here, which is called the Nintendo Switch Online. Now, there's two different versions of Nintendo Switch Online. There's the base plan and the expansion pack. The base plan's pricing for an individual member was $20 a year, and the family plan was $35 a year. Both of these prices are in USD. So for the base Nintendo Switch Online, you would be gaining access to online play, you would have cloud saves, access to the smartphone app, special offers via the Nintendo Store, and a selection of NES and Super Nintendo games playable on your Nintendo Switch. with the release of the expansion pack that came out near the end of October here in 2021. Now we have a different pricing structure here, for the individual membership being about $50 a year and the family membership being about $80 a year. Once again, all these prices are in USD. And with the expansion pack, you have all of the same things included here with the base plan, but you also now have access to 2 new game libraries, the Nintendo 64 and the Sega Genesis game libraries. This expansion pack also includes Animal Crossing New Horizons DLC called Happy Home Paradise. So you're paying about an extra $30 a year for some extra benefits using the expansion pack. But both of these services do function the same way, as you do need a Nintendo Switch Online membership of some kind to play games online now, compared to how the system originally worked back in 2017. And the online experience for the Switch will depend on the games that you're playing. Some games can be pretty seamless online, while others may have some issues here and there. But this all depends on not only your connection, but other people's connections as well. As I've had plenty of games over the years that have ran smoothless and felt like I'm playing with someone in the same room. Other times when I'm playing a game online on my Nintendo Switch, things can feel very hit or miss on the connection, where I would have input delay, the game could be stuttering, or just sometimes you can flat out disconnect from people, and this is all just going to come down to your connection between the other people that you're playing, and this is a game by game basis for what games use what kind of connection types, as some games are peer-to-peer, some games have dedicated servers for connecting you to online gaming, so it's going to just vary based on the games that you play. But from my experience, games being played online for the Switch have been a pretty positive experience. For the most part, I'm playing games on my system using a wired connection via the dock, but there will be times I'll be playing games online wirelessly via my system's portable mode, and again, I have not really noticed any issues while playing in a wired or wireless environment online. But with all these retro games being added to the Switch Online service, Nintendo also added online multiplayer to all of these games. So you can go ahead and connect online in the NES, Super Nintendo, N64, and the Genesis Switch Online apps to play games with your friends. Now, all these games were never intended for you to play with online multiplayer, but Nintendo found a way to go ahead and play these games online with your friends, and for the most part, this experience is pretty pleasant. Now, once again, your experience playing games online using these retro game apps on the Switch is all going to depend on everyone's connections, as I've had some pretty positive experiences playing games online via the NES, Super Nintendo, N64, and Genesis libraries, but sometimes a connection can dip, and that's when you'll start noticing issues like the game skipping around, audio weird like crackle or distortion issues, and it's just, again, all going to depend on your connection to your other people. So if one person doesn't have the best internet connection, that could affect the entire lobby. But you don't just have access to playing games online with your friends in multiplayer mode, you can also use this online mode in these retro game apps to go ahead and spectate people playing single player games. So by doing so, you can go ahead and watch someone play a game, say like Ocarina of Time on the N64 collection of games on the Switch, for example, and you can go ahead and interact with that game as well. With a pointer, you can go ahead and point around on the screen, tell someone where to go, or point out something they may miss in the game, and you can go ahead and also cheer on that player as well, and by doing so, you'll go ahead and give a round of applause for whatever the player has done in the game. But you do want to be careful about this, as if you're not playing with the right people, some people could abuse this pointer control and try to mess with the player while playing a single player game.
This is N64, which is we like, yes. And press this button, Lester. Yes. This file. Yes. Yeah. Play that one. See that door? Gotta go through it. Okay, you see the ocarina? You gotta play it.
This is quite literally hand-holding LP.
Yeah.
See, that's the song you played. Now you're warping the Lost Woods. Yeah.
This is the worst. Now, last thing I want to go ahead and talk about is how you can share your gameplay moments here on the Switch onto social media. So there's two different things you can do to share your gameplay on the Switch. You can go ahead and take screenshots or a video recording of whatever happened in your game. So to take a screenshot, you want to go ahead and press the share button on your controller to take a screenshot of the game that you're playing on your Switch, and you can go ahead and hold down that share button for a couple seconds to record up to 30 seconds of your gameplay. By doing so, you can go ahead and post these screenshots or video recordings to either Facebook or Twitter, but you can go ahead and post up to 4 screenshots at once. So if you want to post multiple pictures at once, well, you can go ahead and do so. But you can also trim your videos too if 30 seconds is too much video for you to post and you want to only post, say, about 10 seconds of a clip instead. Using this trimming feature, you can go ahead and cut out those things you don't want, and then this will be saved as a new video recording on your Switch in case you made a mistake and you want to go back and trim your video once again with the original source clip. And if you're posting to a site like Twitter, for example, you have up to 280 characters to go ahead and compose your tweet, compared to originally when the Switch launched, you only had about 140 characters to tweet out your screenshots or your video recordings to Twitter. So this is a vast improvement compared to how things were when the system first released back in 2017. But using the sharing functionality on the Switch is a very convenient way of sharing some of your favorite gameplay moments with your friends on social media. That's pretty much everything I want to go ahead and talk about in this video when it comes to the OLED model Switch here. And I gotta say, this system has been an absolute treat to use over these past few weeks, as every change made to this system has been a vast improvement for someone like myself who's coming off of using the OG model Switch that I got when it launched back in 2017. Now, this system I primarily used over the lifespan in TV mode, and then once in a while take it out of the dock and play in portable mode, and that's just simply because the battery life for me on average was about 2 to 3 hours. And while that isn't unusable, if I took the system out of the house, I would need to make sure I bring a charger with me, as it most likely will die during my play sessions when I'm on the go. Not just that, but then also the screen on here, while it isn't unusable by today's standards, has some pretty big bezels, which can kind of take you out of that immersion factor in some games. Not just that, but the 6.2-inch screen here is kind of small-ish by today's standards for someone like myself who doesn't have the best vision already, so some text is a little hard to read. Now, when you compare this screen to the OLED Switch, you can already see a vast improvement, as that extra inch here makes a pretty big difference when it comes to text, making it easier for someone like myself who doesn't already have that best vision to read things on the go. Not just that, but then having true blacks with the OLED type and having more vivid colors, this is just a much better panel, and it makes for a much better viewing experience while playing on the go. Not just that, but the better battery life on this system, being nearly double the battery life of the original model Switch, has made for a more seamless portable experience, as I have not needed a charger when taking the system out of the house to play in portable mode compared to my OG model Switch. The better audio as well on the OLED Switch, along with its better kickstand, has just made for also a much better portable experience with the system. But as you've noticed at this point, all the strengths that the OLED Switch brings is all for its portable factor. So that's where the argument comes in for which model of Switch should you buy, the OLED Switch or an OG Switch. And this will come down to how you play your system. If you primarily play in portable mode, then I can recommend picking up the OLED Switch or upgrading from an original model Switch to the OLED model, as this is the best way of playing the Switch in portable mode. With that bigger screen, better audio, better kickstand, it's just a much better experience. But if you primarily play the system on your television and you barely play the system in portable mode, if at all, then I'll recommend just go with the original model Switch and save yourself that extra $50, as all these changes are primarily in that portable mode, and the docked modes play the exact same between the two systems. They still both output in 1080p and both run games in the exact same resolutions and frame rates. So if you primarily play in TV mode, you won't notice any difference between the system that can justify that extra $50. But I'll say, coming off of my launch unit Switch, I've desperately needed to upgrade for a while, This has been a very pleasant experience to play on the OLED model Switch with all these improvements to the portable mode. I found myself playing a lot more on my Switch in portable mode because of these changes, and it's just made playing games on the system just a lot more comfortable in my opinion. So I've been very happy with this system, and again, if you play your Switch primarily in portable mode, then I can highly recommend you pick up the OLED model Switch, as all the changes Nintendo brought to the system has been a very pleasant playing experience in my opinion. But with that said, that's going to conclude today's video. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this, and again, if you want to go ahead and hear my thoughts about the original model Switch, I will leave a link down in the description below to my original review that I posted back in 2017. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.